to Ecoholics. After learning the basic concepts of research aptitude, today we are going to learn a very important and a very prominent question that is always present in the UGC NET paper, which is define or explain or chronologically put the research process. Research process is not just very important from the point of view of examination, but it also is going to help you while actually doing the research, and which is why today we are going to learn variety of steps that are present in research process. Now many a times students get confused that research process have 7 steps, 9 steps, 10 steps, how many steps. So you should not be very keen on knowing how many steps or which step will indicate what, but rather you should understand the whole process altogether, and which is why today we will interlink each of the process and we'll try to identify how does a whole research process looks like. So let's understand the research process. Now over here we have a full chart of the whole processes which are present in the research process. The whole the amount of objectives or the amount of factors that are going to be present or the amount of parameters that are going to be present in your research process. So we will look them one by one. First, let's have a look at the whole chart. So we'll start with these stages. The first stage being identifying the problem, reviewing the literature, setting research questions, objectives and hypothesis, choosing the study design, deciding on the sample design, collecting the data, processing and analyzing the data, and lastly writing the report. Usually most of the researches, most of the research thesis will have all of these sequential points. There are many processes which are given in books or in various types of articles which may differ from this sequence or these stages. The terms may be changed, however the process would remain the same. So today we are going to understand the holistic process of research, and we'll start with the stage 1, which is identifying the problem. So let's begin with the identification of the problem. Whenever you go for identification and defining your research problem, so this problem basically is the research problem. It is going to include not just the identification but also the definition or defining of this problem. Basically, when we talk about identification of the problem, we talk about the various concepts like the parameters which are going to be used, the parameters, the factors, the variables that are going to be very, very important for your research. You will identify that. You will identify, of course, the topic, the theme. You will also have the various types of research based areas. So you will also identify on what areas you will have to work. Okay, so you will narrow down these areas and then you will of course process your problem, research problem. So the research problem always should be well defined, because it is the first stage of your research process, because it is the first stage of which you're going to start building your research, which is why the whole research process, the first stage of defining the problem should be well defined. It should have all those basic nitty-gritties that you are going to explain in the whole research process, and which is why it has to be well described, well defined, and should be very clear for the audience while they read it, right? So that becomes your identifying the research problem. The next stage of the research process is reviewing of literature. This process is quite critical critical, and the reason of this process being critical is because review of literature normally is misunderstood or misinterpreted. Normally it's understood that review of literature would mean reading the books and copying what all material has been done before about a certain topic or a certain subject or a certain piece of information that you're researching about and pasting it into your research thesis. No, that's absolutely not the review of literature. So whenever we talk about the review of literature, it always is very objective and goal oriented. Right? Review of literature would mean that whatever knowledge you receive from various books, journals, articles, even documentaries, and any other such source which has already done a certain research on the same topic or the same theme on which you also are researching. That becomes your reviewing of literature. So this task has to be done exhaustively for a couple of months or for many days, because you will have to not just read or go through these books and articles and journals and magazines and videos and whatnot, but you will also have to analyze 3 very important points. What are these 3 important points in review of literature? Let's understand. So 3 things to do in your review of literature are: 1, to identify the known, something that you already know about whatever you're researching about. First, identify what do you already know about and research that or review that in the whatever literature you have found. Okay, it can be books, it can be magazines, it can be papers, it can be anything, right? Then the next task is to identify the unknown. By unknown, we mean that many things, whatever you're researching about, there would be many things that you would not know about. There would be many things which are very alien to you or which you might not be making any sense of. So those unknown parameters also need to be reviewed and seen and gone through once through all of these literature that is available at your disposal. And lastly, third very important thing is to identify the suitable contribution. Identify the suitable contribution. What does suitable contribution mean? As a researcher, you know what is known already to you and what was unknown to you up until now. By knowing both of these different consequences and propositions in your research, during your research, you will also have to analyze what contribution you are going to make in that research. What will be your opinion, your insight, your contribution towards that research? Every researcher has a certain responsibility towards the society, towards the environment, towards the economy, towards whatever they are contributing to. And which is why the research should not be vague, in vain and futile. It should contribute in a very productive manner, and which is why this will be the time, after reviewing everything, all the literature under the sun, it will be the right time for the researcher to identify what will be their contribution towards that research. And that becomes your third and very, very important point. So the first point was the identification of research problem, okay, which majorly is like an outline. For example, if I make something like, if I make something like this, right, and this looks like something, this looks like a cone, it can be anything, but if you really give a correct outline to it, so it becomes like an ice cream. So research problem or identification of research problem is moreover like making an outline of the structure of what you're going to find, while the reviewing of the literature has a major objective to find out what the researcher actually is going to contribute towards the research. So these are the first two stages of the research process.